7 things to never tell a men. You're just like your dad, unless his dad is The Rock. This is not a compliment. Even if you mean well, comparisons like this hit deep, and they're hard to shake. If there's an issue, address his behavior, don't drag his lineage into it. Why don't you make more money? Oof, just don't. Men tie their self-worth to their ability to provide. If you're not happy with the financial situation, have a conversation about teamwork and goals, not about his paycheck. Be a man, stop. What does that even mean? Men feel just as much pressure as women to fit into roles that society sets. Instead of pushing outdated ideas, encourage his version of strength, whether it's being tough or being vulnerable. You always, you never. 2 words that immediately put him on the defensive. No one always does something, and no one never does something. Be specific. Instead of you never listen, try I feel unheard when this happens. Big difference. My ex used to, look, unless it's a funny story or something totally neutral, leave the ex out of it. No man wants to feel like he's in a competition with someone you used to love. Are you even listening? If you have to ask, he's probably not. But there's a better way to get his attention. Pause, make eye contact and say, this is important to me. You'll get a way better response. It's fine, IT's not fine, and he knows IT, be honest. If something is bothering you, say so. He can't read your mind, and passive aggression just leads to resentment. Boom. There you go. 7 things to never say to a man, because communication is everything. That sentence might seem harmless, maybe even obvious, but let's get real. When you tell a man he's just like his dad, it hits different. It's not just words, it's a mirror he didn't ask for. And depending on his relationship with his father, that mirror can be brutal. Maybe his dad was tough, critical, or emotionally distant. Maybe he worked too much. Maybe he had a temper. Maybe he was never around at all. Now, suddenly in one sentence, you've turned him into someone he's spent years trying not to be. And here's the kicker, you probably didn't even mean it that way. Maybe you were just pointing out a habit, a mannerism, something small, but that's not how it lands. It goes straight to identity. It makes him feel like his past is bigger than his choices, like no matter what he does, he's already been cast in a role he didn't pick. And that is suffocating. Now, let's flip it. What if he has a great dad? What if his father is the definition of strong, successful, and admirable? Even then, those words carry weight. Because now, instead of feeling like he's failing, he feels like he's competing. Like he has to measure up to someone who seems larger than life. And you know what pressure does? It makes people shut down. It makes them defensive. It makes them withdraw instead of engage. And let's be honest, you wouldn't like it either. Imagine someone looking at you during an argument and saying, you're just like your mom. Even if your mom is a saint, you'd feel it. It would sting. It would make you question yourself. You'd probably snap back, I am not like her. And just like that, the conversation stops being about the actual issue and turns into a battle over identity. That's the problem with comparisons. They don't create change, they create walls. And the last thing you want in a relationship is a man who feels like he has to prove he's not something instead of focusing on who he is. If you want to address something, address his behavior. Talk about what's happening in the moment, not some generational pattern he may or may not be carrying. If he's being short-tempered, say, hey, I feel like you're really frustrated. Can we talk about it? That invites him to open up instead of shutting down. If he's pulling away emotionally, say, I miss you. I feel like we're not as connected lately. That makes it about the two of you, not about the ghost of his father looming over him. The goal here isn't to walk on eggshells. It's not about avoiding hard conversations. It's about making sure those conversations are actually productive. Because if the goal is to get through to him, to have him listen, reflect, and grow, then hitting him with a statement that immediately puts him on the defensive is the least effective way to do it. We all have things we're working through. Every single one of us. And for a lot of men, part of that work is untangling themselves from the expectations, fears, and patterns they saw growing up. That's not an overnight process. That's a lifetime of unlearning and choosing something different. And the best way to support that is to see him for who he is today, not who he came from. There's power in words. There's power in how we frame things. When you call out his actions instead of attaching them to something bigger, you're giving him space to own it, to reflect on it, and to actually change it. You're keeping the focus where it belongs, on him and the relationship you're building together. And that is where real change happens. That question, it cuts deep. It's not just about money. It's about identity. It's about pride. It's about a man's sense of worth in a world that constantly tells him that his value is tied to the size of his paycheck. And when you ask it, when you say those words out loud, it doesn't land as curiosity. It lands as failure. It lands as you're not enough. And let's be honest, in most cases, it's not even really about the number in his bank account. It's about stability. It's about security. It's about wanting more for your future, your family, your life together. But the way you frame it, that makes all the difference. Because when you phrase it as, why don't you make more? It isolates him. It makes him feel like he's falling short, like he's standing on a stage under a spotlight with nowhere to hide. No one thrives under that kind of pressure. When someone feels attacked, they don't get motivated, they shut down. They retreat. They defend. Instead of thinking about ways to grow or change, he's stuck replaying those words in his head, hearing them over and over again as proof that he's not enough for you. And here's the reality: money is always going to be a factor in a relationship. It's not something you can ignore. It affects where you live, what you do, the stress you carry. So yes, talk about it. But how you talk about it determines whether that conversation builds something or burns it down. Instead of saying, why don't you make more money? Try this. I've been thinking a lot about our future. How can we work together to create more financial freedom? That shifts it from blame to teamwork. It makes it about a shared goal instead of a personal attack. And when something feels like a shared goal, it's motivating. It's inspiring. It gives him a reason to step up without feeling like he's already failing. And let's flip the script for a second. Imagine if someone looked at you and said, why aren't you more attractive? Or why aren't you a better parent? It wouldn't push you to improve. It would gut you. It would leave you questioning yourself, wondering if everything you've done up until now even counts. That's what this question does to a man. And let's be clear, this is not about settling. If financial security is a deal breaker for you, that's okay. If you want a partner who matches your ambition or contributes in a certain way, own that. But if you're in this together, if you love him, respect him, and want to see him thrive, then build him up. Encourage his growth. Don't attack his shortcomings. Because at the end of the day, money comes and goes. Careers change. Circumstances shift. But the way you make someone feel in these moments, that stays, that lasts. That determines whether you're building a partnership or breaking one apart. That phrase, it's outdated, it's vague, and honestly, it's just lazy. Be a man. What does that even mean? Be tough. Be silent. Hide your emotions. Provide at all costs. For generations, men have been shoved into a box labeled this is what a man should be, and every time they step outside of it, they get shamed right back in. And let's be real, men feel pressure just as much as women do. Different expectations, same weight. Women are told to be soft, nurturing, put together. Men are told to be strong, unemotional, in control at all times. Both are exhausting. Both create impossible standards. And when you throw be a man at him, you're not helping, you're reinforcing everything he's spent years trying to navigate. Let's flip the script. Imagine someone looking at you and saying, be a woman. What does that even mean? Be quieter, more feminine, less opinionated. You'd push back immediately. You'd demand specifics. And that's exactly what happens when you tell a man to be a man. It's not a conversation, it's a demand with no clear definition. And all it does is make him feel like whatever he is isn't enough. And here's the truth. Real strength isn't about fitting into some outdated mold. It's not about being emotionless. It's not about always having the answer. It's about showing up. It's about resilience. It's about choosing to be present even when things are hard. And sometimes being a man means doing the exact opposite of what society has conditioned him to do. It means admitting when he's struggling. It means expressing his feelings. It means being vulnerable, even when every instinct tells him to shut down. So instead of saying, be a man, try something else. If you want him to step up in a certain way, be specific. Say, I need your support on this. If you want him to be more present, say, I feel like we're disconnected and I miss you. If you want him to handle a situation differently, say, I know you're capable of more and I believe in you. That's how you encourage growth without tearing him down. Because the world is already throwing enough expectations at him. He doesn't need one more voice telling him what he should be. He needs a voice reminding him that who he is, who he's becoming is already enough. Those two words, they're fight starters. You never, sir. They feel like accusations. They feel like proof that no matter what he does, he's already lost. And the moment you say them, he's not listening to what you're saying. He's too busy defending himself. Because let's be real, no one always does something, and no one never does something. When you say you never listen, his brain immediately searches for proof that you're wrong. Oh, really? I never listen. What about last week when I helped you with that problem at work? What about the time I sat up with you when you were upset? Boom, he's out of the conversation and into his defense mode. And it's not just him. If someone said to you, you always overreact, wouldn't you immediately think of a time you didn't? Wouldn't you feel the need to push back, to prove them wrong? That's human nature. The second we feel like we're being unfairly labeled, we stop listening and start proving our case. But if the goal is actually to communicate, if what you really want is for him to hear you and change something, then it's not about being right. It's about being effective. Instead of you never listen, say, I feel unheard when this happens. Instead of you always ignore me, say, I feel disconnected when we don't talk about things. See the difference? One attacks, the other invites. One triggers defensiveness, the other opens the door to real conversation. And here's the thing, words matter. Tone matters. The way we frame things changes how they're received. When you shift from blame to how something makes you feel, you give the other person space to actually respond instead of react. You turn a fight into a discussion. You stop making it about what's wrong with them and start making it about how you can work together. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to be heard. And the fastest way to get someone to actually listen, stop telling them what they always or never do and start telling them how it actually makes you feel. That's where real change happens. Nothing kills the moment faster than bringing up your ex. Seriously, there's no good way for it to land. Even if you think you're just making a casual comment, all he hears is comparison. And no man wants to feel like he's competing with someone you used to love. Let's be real, your ex is part of your past, and that's fine. But when you bring them into your present, even in small ways, it creates an unspoken standard. It plants a seed of doubt. Am I measuring up? Is she still thinking about him? Does she wish I did things differently? And once those thoughts creep in, they don't just disappear. And look, this isn't about pretending your ex never existed. You've had past relationships just like he has. But how you talk about them matters. If you're saying, oh, my ex used to surprise me with flowers all the time, what do you think he's hearing? Not wow, what a fun fact, but so I'm not romantic enough. I'm failing at this boyfriend-husband thing. Even if that's not what you meant, that's how it lands. And let's flip it for a second. Imagine him saying, my ex used to always cook for me. How would that feel? Like a casual statement, or like an expectation, like a reminder that someone before you did something better. Exactly. Now, are there exceptions? Of course. If it's a lighthearted, neutral story, something like one time, my ex and I got lost in a foreign country, and it was chaos, fine. But if it's about something he is or isn't doing, just don't. It's not productive. It's not motivating. It's just making him feel like he's living in someone else's shadow. Instead of saying, my ex used to try this, I really love when you do this for me. Instead of looking backward at what someone else did, focus on what he does now. Because no one wants to be a replacement. No one wants to feel like they're constantly being measured against someone who isn't even here anymore. The best relationships aren't built on comparison. They're built on appreciation. And if you want to keep a man engaged, confident, and feeling like he is the one you choose every day, leave the past where it belongs. That question, it's a trap. Are you even listening? The second you say it, the answer doesn't even matter. Because if he was listening, now he's annoyed. And if he wasn't listening, now he's defensive. Either way, you've lost him. And let's be honest, if you have to ask, he probably wasn't fully there. But here's the thing, it's not because he doesn't care. It's not because he doesn't love you. Sometimes people get distracted. Sometimes their brains are somewhere else. It happens to all of us. The question is, how do you get his attention without turning it into a fight? Because are you even listening? Isn't really asking a question, it's throwing a jab. It's saying you're not present and I don't feel valued. And guess what? That's a valid feeling. But calling him out like that, it just makes him shut down or get defensive instead of actually tuning in. So instead of snapping, are you even listening? Try this pause, make eye contact, and say, this is important to me. Boom. Instant shift. You're not accusing, you're inviting. You're letting him know, hey, I need you here with me right now. And that is way more effective than a passive-aggressive call-out. And if you really want to drive it home, touch his hand, say his name, get that physical connection in there. Because let's be real, people zone out sometimes, not just men, we all do. The key is knowing how to bring them back in a way that makes them want to listen instead of making them feel like they failed. Because communication isn't just about talking, it's about how you say things. And if the goal is to be heard, to be understood, to connect, then calling him out won't get you there. But making it clear that this moment, this conversation, this matters, that's the game changer. That phrase, it's a lie. And he knows it. When you say, it's fine, but your tone, your body language, your entire energy screams IT. IS, not. Fine, dot, dash, dash, H, he feels it. And now he's stuck in a lose-lose situation. If he takes you at your word, he's ignoring a problem. If he pushes, he's annoying you. Either way, he's guessing, and relationships don't work when one person is stuck playing emotional detective. And let's be real, why do we say it? Because we're frustrated, because we don't want to argue, because we want him to already know what's wrong without us having to spell it out. But here's the thing he doesn't always know. He can't read your mind. And waiting for him to magically figure it out, that's not communication. That's a recipe for resentment. And resentment, that's what kills relationships, not overnight, not in one big explosion, but in small, quiet moments. Every unspoken feeling, every it's fine that isn't fine, builds a wall brick by brick. And before you know it, you're not even mad about the thing anymore. You're mad that he never noticed, never asked, never fixed something he didn't even realize was broken. So instead of it's fine, try honesty. Say, I'm upset, but I don't know how to talk about it yet. Or I need a minute to process before we discuss this. Or if you're ready, this hurt me and I need to talk about it. That's clear. That's direct. That gives him a way to actually show up for you instead of tiptoeing around your silence. Because here's the truth. A good man wants to get it right. He wants to understand. But he can't fix what he doesn't know is broken. So stop making him guess. Say what you need. Speak your truth. And stop saying it's fine when it's anything but. At the end of the day, words are powerful. They can build someone up or they can tear them down. And when it comes to the man in your life, what you say and how you say it matters more than you think. It's not about walking on eggshells or sugarcoating everything. It's about communicating in a way that actually gets you what you want. Connection, understanding, and a stronger relationship. Because here's the truth, men feel just as much pressure as women do. They're constantly measuring themselves against expectations they didn't even set. Am I successful enough? Am I strong enough? Am I doing enough? And when you throw words at them that make them feel like they're failing before they even get a chance to try, they don't rise up, they shut down. But here's the good news, you have the power to change that. Instead of criticizing, invite conversation. Instead of comparisons, show appreciation. Instead of passive aggression, be honest. When you start choosing words that open doors instead of closing them, everything shifts. Suddenly, he's not just hearing what you're saying, he's listening. He's responding. He's showing up in ways he never has before. And that's the goal, right? Not to control, not to manipulate, but to connect. Because when a man feels seen, respected, encouraged, he doesn't just try harder, he wants to be better. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because he chooses to. And that's when relationships thrive. So choose your words wisely. Not because you have to, but because you can. Because the way you communicate isn't just about what's being said, it's about what's being heard. And when you get that right, everything changes.